as we were looking to expand the breadth of our services, particularly, again, going back to that consumer of modest means. And so payments and fintech seem like a great opportunity to do that. We formed Central Payments 5 years ago, just over 5 years ago, actually. And the whole notion of Central Payments was, to offer innovative products that required a bank, and to do it in a way that allowed us to partner with very technology-first organizations focused on customer experience.
Welcome to the Tearsheet podcast. I'm Zack Miller. Smaller financial institutions are finding a way to compete in a world of too big to fail banks. The Central Bank of Kansas City is an interesting case study. The bank is one of a small number of FIs in the U.S. certified by the Treasury as a community development financial institution, serving people of modest means who may not have had the benefit of affordable and accessible financial products. A little over 5 years ago, the company launched Central Payments, a division that leads the bank's nationwide presence in the payments industry. Trent Sorbe is the president of Central Payments and joins us on the podcast to talk about how his firm has been able to punch above its weight in issuing activities, headquartered near Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Central Payments recently announced the creation of its Falls Fintech Accelerator, and Trent describes how the new program will continue to service the ecosystem Central Payments is building. We also discuss the company's new open API platform, CBKC, and how that fits into all the moving pieces. Trent Sorbe is my guest today on the Tearsheet podcast. But before we jump into the interview, I wanted to invite you to Tearsheet's latest event, the Embedded Conference. A big theme on this program and in our reporting has been about how financial services are showing up everywhere, in B2B software platforms, in retail and transportation and travel. The Embedded Conference brings together financial services, fintech, and vertical industries looking to create new financial products. We've got a great speaker lineup. Register today by going to our website and clicking on the Embedded Conference button at the top right of your screen. Here's my interview with Trent.
I'm Trent Sorbe. I'm the founder of Central Payments and the CEO and president here. And I'm also the co-founder of Falls Fintech.
So I think there's a lot to unpack, given the conversation we had in our talk before the call. Can you give us sort of an overview of organizationally Central Payments and sort of how you, I guess, the genesis story of how you guys came to be?
Yeah, of course. It's an interesting little story. Central Payments was really born out of a vision at Central Bank of Kansas City, down, of course, in Kansas City. Our ownership and senior leadership there was looking for ways coming out of the recession period of 2008, 2009, ways in which they can grow the bank, but to do it in a very unique way because Central Bank of Kansas City is a community development financial institution. And so, that means a host of things, but really it's all about—
I'd like to come back to that, and discuss that more in depth, what that means. Sorry.
Of course, no, and definitely. But really, that was part of the impetus for starting Central Payments, was that they were looking for ways to grow the bank coming out of the recession, serving the neighborhoods that we serve. I always say, if unemployment in the Kansas City area was, I'll make the number up, 8% coming out of the recession, it was probably 50% in the neighborhoods that we serve, particularly in our, where our home office is in Northeast KC. And so the leadership was really looking for ways to grow the bank, but stay true to the mission and continue to serve the consumers we were serving. And, we always refer to our customers as customers of modest means. And so while we always had an option to build branches and plant them in affluent areas of the city, leadership, I think rightly looked at ways in which we can expand into fintech and payments as a way to serve the customer, but to do it in a way that was really the underlying growth strategy for the bank.
So can we talk a little bit about what it means to be a CBKC? Is that the right designation?
No,
Sorry,
I'm
that's
sorry.
you guys. My bad.
Central Bank. Yeah, that's okay. Central Bank of Kansas City. And of course, we're a certified community development financial institution.
CDFI, that was the term I was looking for. Yes. So you gave us, how many of them are out there? Like, I guess a little bit more about that designation, why you guys chose it. I know you gave us a little overview, but I'm curious more about that structure and whether that's something that you'd recommend to other community banks.
Yeah, it's a very unique business model. There's only about 133 CDFIs that are also banks. That number fluctuates a little bit. Last I knew, the number was 133. There are a lot of CDFIs that are certified by the Treasury Department, but again, only about 135-ish or so that are banks. Among a whole lot of things that opens up for the bank, one of those is access to be able to issue new markets tax credits. And while that doesn't really have anything to do with payments, but what it does do is it allows CBKC to work with developers looking to build worthwhile projects in inner city Kansas, Missouri, Illinois, where they see an opportunity for economic growth, but to do it in distressed neighborhoods. And so Central Bank of Kansas City is able to issue tax credits to those developers and then also do some financing for those development projects in very worthwhile projects in very distressed areas.
Very interesting structure. So let's talk about the team's background and how you guys are set up to go after that fintech business that you described initially.
Yeah, and so the evolution coming out, as a CDFI, the evolution into payments doesn't seem natural at first blush, but for us, it felt very natural as we were looking to expand the breadth of our services, particularly, again, going back to that consumer of modest means. And so payments and fintech seem like a great opportunity to do that. We formed Central Payments 5 years ago, just over 5 years ago, actually. And the whole notion of Central Payments was, to offer innovative products that required a bank and to do it in a way that allowed us to partner with very technology-first organizations focused on customer experience, focused on really maximizing the experience customers have with whatever the device is that they use. And so, coming out of that recession period, the bank was really looking at a way, where is growth going to come from? And so rather than build more expensive branches and try to build product and compete with large banks and now an emerging fintech sector, I think the bank rightfully said, let's focus on the infrastructure of payments. And we always joke, kind of get down in the guts of payments.
Mm-hmm.
In the end, it takes a bank to offer insured deposits. It takes a bank to be a member in Visa, MasterCard. It takes a bank in many cases to ultimately move ACHs and wires. It takes a bank to lawfully be involved in money movements in accordance with all of the AML and BSA rules. And so we really saw a role there for the bank and for Central Payments to go out there and find that business. Let the technology first companies focus on user experience and really be their support mechanism. Their foundation is really what we talk about around here. Let them build a business on top of us. And then again, really let us become the experts and focus on the infrastructure of the product.
And just given that focus, that the banks focus on the consumer of modest means, are the fintech companies you're working with focused on that, or do you work with sort of a general sort of fintech approach?
In many cases, they are, but not exclusively. And
Okay.
so our product breadth, we work with about 15 fintechs that offer a variety of products, but then also separate from the fintechs, we work with very established payments companies, companies we've all heard of that are offering prepaid debit cards and remittance services, and now new push payments. So it really it runs the gamut. We aren't exclusive to products that first and foremost are serving low and moderate income consumers, but we are drawn there, and the majority of our business really is focused on that side. And so opportunities that come to us, we really are looking for ways to serve that particular consumer, but it's not exclusive, and we have great opportunities going with programs that don't have as their primary focus serving that particular demographic.
And I guess, Trent, over the past 5 years, have you seen more and more, I guess, at the startup, well, I guess both at startup and both at incumbent institutions, an increased focus on servicing that specific customer of modest means?
I think, yeah, great question. Yes, we have. And I think that's largely because you're talking about such a large percentage of the population that just simply hasn't enjoyed the benefits of doing business with a financial institution, whether it's because they didn't trust a financial institution, they didn't feel comfortable there, the products weren't able to reach them, the products couldn't be used in their neighborhoods, and so fintechs, I think, have, and really as a result of mobile technology, have allowed to penetrate that demographic in a way that brings really valuable, great products to the demographic via the mobile experience, and much less focused on the branch experience. And so I think naturally, products that maybe not even in the beginning thought that they would be particularly LMI focused have seen great penetration with the LMI population, and that's what we're really drawn to.
That's amazing. I don't know what your relationship with your customers are, or with your partners. Can you give us like hard examples of some of the companies you work with and how they're helping the LMI customer?
Yeah, of course. We work with a company called PayActive. PayActive is a well-established fintech company, well-known across the country, providing earned wage access products for consumers who find themselves, sort of with wages accrued, with money they've earned, and it's just not payday yet. And so PayActive is a great example of a company that works with us to deliver wages in the middle of a pay period, so consumers have access to liquidity sources and don't need to go to high-cost sources of credit, and really just accessing wages that they've earned. And it's not just PayActive. We've got a number of companies that we work with involved in that space, that we really think are very interesting because, again, going back to my original point, the folks that find themselves in a liquidity crunch during a 2-week period, in many cases, are those same consumers that we were serving out of our branches in inner city Kansas City.
That's really interesting. And so in that field, I guess, I mean, we've seen it as well at Tearsheet, sort of, a few of these different companies arise. Do you typically are these standalone companies? Are these companies that work through an employer or a payroll company? I guess it could be both.
Yeah, we've actually seen the model a couple different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Payroll companies coming direct to us, third-party companies that are working directly with the payroll company, third-party companies working directly with the employer. It's interesting to watch this space evolve. So, PayActive is a good example of companies that are working with employer, but we also have companies that are working with payroll providers, which is an interesting way to sort of provide the same service, just attack it with a different distribution strategy.
Understood. And Central Payments is headquartered in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Is that correct?
We are Sioux Falls. Can
you talk about that geography and what that means for you and payments?
Happy to.
Yeah.
Happy to do that because it's an interesting story. Sioux Falls, most people not living in the Midwest, think of Sioux Falls and says, that's really a mecca for outdoor recreation. I love to go pheasant hunting there. I love to go fishing in Sioux Falls. I don't necessarily love the winters there. But Sioux Falls is really the hub of payment card issuing in the U.S. It goes back to when Citi relocated to Sioux Falls in the mid-1980s, and out from Citi Citi incubated a whole banking payment card ecosystem here. And so, Citi here, Wells Fargo feels compelled to come here, Capital One is here, and then you have entrepreneurs who may have got their start in one of those large organizations, said, I'm going to go start my own payments business. In the 80s and the 90s, it was often around credit cards. And then when prepaid cards started to emerge as a great product for lots of different uses, Sioux Falls was already sitting on sort of the backbone of card issuing, and so it was only natural that prepaid card issuers or prepaid card issuing started to really take hold here. And so now we look at it and say, whether what started as prime credit as well as subprime moved into prepaid cards, now we see fintech partnerships. It's really that same backbone that's supporting that. And so Sioux Falls is a great place to do that, and we called it home because access to a very talented pool of employees, folks that have been around payments a long time. It's probably, I always say, it's one of the few places that if I'm recruiting for a mid-level manager with 8 or 9 years of AML BSA experience in payments, Sioux Falls is one of the few places where I'll probably have 3 dozen resumes come in. And so we have access to an outstanding talent pool, a backbone, and really a local economic development and government that is very supportive of payments. So we look at Sioux Falls as a very strategic place to be, and most all of our staff are located here. We've got a few remote employees, but the whole payments division is really run out of Sioux Falls.
So it sounds like Sioux Falls obviously was a great place to host the new accelerator that you guys launched. Obviously you're there anyway, but the point is, like, it just sounds like a very rich environment. Can you talk about the thought process behind launching an accelerator? Tell us a little bit about how this accelerator is structured, and how that fits into sort of your overall strategy.
Sure. I think for those that may not know us very well, it may look like sort of a reactionary, knee-jerk project, but we think it's very, very strategic. We look at Falls Fintech, and one of the reasons why we created Falls Fintech, it's actually, I'll give you a little background on what kind of brought Falls Fintech around. We are constantly talking with really interesting entrepreneurs who have an amazing product idea, but it just feels a little early for them to, they haven't raised enough money yet. They have a great product. And so it's just a little premature for them to come on board with us, partner with us, go out there and sign on very expensive, capital intensive services like card processing and ID verification and, all card manufacturing and all those very capital intensive things. And so we were trying to figure out a way, how could we look at those great projects, bring them along, projects that we always say are at their biggest challenge now is the last mile challenge, that they've raised a little money, the product has begun to take shape, but they're looking at, a couple $1 million now in spend and burn, just to try to get to market. And, being in the payments ecosystem and working with all of the companies that fintechs need to have access to, we looked at a way, how can we help them accelerate that last mile challenge, do it with a team of experts, and really bring that product to life much earlier and at much lower cost than what they would have done had they gone on it, alone. And so Falls Fintech for us was a very natural extension of our business development strategy of finding really interesting products and services, putting them on top of our payments ecosystem or our payments backbone, if you will, and then bring them to life. But frankly, to try to do it earlier in the process, and then help them. The sooner they come to market, the easier it is to raise the next round. And so I think it's really mutually beneficial. And so Falls Fintech for us, super strategic to our mission, and frankly, going back to the conversation around Sioux Falls, a great opportunity to expose entrepreneurs to what has been called the #1 entrepreneur city in the country. So we think it works for everybody involved.
That makes a ton of sense for everybody involved. But what does the delivery mechanism look like? What is is it in-house? Like, can you just talk about how and in what capacity you provide those services to startups that enter the accelerator?
Absolutely. It's a 10-week accelerator. We'll run 2 cohorts per year. The first cohort is scheduled for March of 2020. We are trying to be sensitive. South Dakota in the middle of January can be a little tough on somebody from California, for example. So we said, let's start it in March, where there's still a pretty good chance you're going to see all 4 seasons. But it's a 10-week accelerator. It is mostly on site, but we did put in some custom curriculum where entrepreneurs could do it remotely if they wanted to sort of split it up and not be here for a constant 10-week period. And so I believe there are 3 weeks in the 10-week period that can be accommodated remote if folks want to go back and see family or friends. So we think that was a really good combination versus insisting that they be on site. And we joke around here a little bit. We're better to really be focused on a product build and really be heads down, cranking on product, and then Sioux Falls, where you'll never be distracted by the beach, or whatever you like to do outside in warm, wonderful weather. It's really for us allowing people to come down to be here and just be focused.
And how do you plan, Trent, to let those entrepreneurs get the best of central payments, like knowledge base and people? Like what does the interface look like there?
Yeah, and this has been really the most exciting part of this project. Our business today allows us to interact with dozens and dozens and dozens of companies involved in various aspects of the payments ecosystem: processing, card fulfillment, ID verification, technology, security, mobile applications. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And so not only will cohort participants have access to my staff, who, incredibly experienced staff. We don't have a manager with less than 10 years of experience in payments. And so not only would they have access to our staff, but we're bringing in companies we work with, really best in class solutions, and best in class providers. And so, you know, cohort participants will have an opportunity to interact directly with the networks, directly with the best processors we believe in the space. And so to get that sort of face time, to get that exposure, is pretty rare for a company that, maybe has raised $1 million or $2 million or something like that. And those partners that we work with, they've jumped on board in a big way because they see the same value we do. How can we identify really interesting products that we think have great potential earlier in their life cycle? And so, we announced that MasterCard was one of our founding sponsors, and MasterCard's a great example of a partner of ours that we have an excellent relationship with, who's come to the table and said, yeah, we want to work with you on this. We want to bring the resources and the expertise of MasterCard behind Falls Fintech. And we're going to announce just ahead of Money 2020 more of those founding partnerships that are top of mind providers that want to be involved and really see a chance to adopt the cohort participants, and really bring them in, and give them every tool and resource that's imaginable. We say around here, it's 70 days and 70 mentors. And so 70 days in the cohort and access to 70 mentors. It doesn't mean we're going to put 70 people through the cohort, but every cohort participant is going to be able to identify particular aspects of their business that they feel they're most in need of development on. And then we're going to come back to them and say, okay, A, we've got a week focused on that topic. B, here's 5, 6, or 7 industry-leading folks in that area that you've identified as being an area of possible improvement. Call on them. They know you might be calling. They're at your disposal, to really brain drain, and really give you an opportunity to ask the questions of people that you may never have access to. So, 70 days, 70 partners, or 70 mentors, is really catching on.
That's a great tagline. In the remaining time that we have time for one last question. I know in the news about the launch of the Falls Fintech Accelerator, you also announced the release of the CPX Open API platform. Can you tell listeners what that is and what you intend to do with that?
Absolutely. We recognized from the fintechs we've worked with over the last 5 years, they've showed us so many ways in which we can become a more embedded strategic partner of theirs. And one of those ways is simply connectivity. And so when CPX was really built out of the idea of letting us come to the marketplace, bring all of those top of mind providers that I mentioned: networks, processors, card fulfillment providers, ID verification services, surcharge-free ATMs, bring them along and allow partners to effectively bolt into us and get access to all of those providers. The interest, and to do it at a much lower price point, because they get the benefit of our global business that we're doing with those partners. And so to come in through CPX to get access to be able to offer a DDA or a debit card or a prepaid card, is a great opportunity for the fintech. It makes them, makes us to be a very valuable partner to them. And then we think it's, very strategic for us in terms of, trying to make sure we have what's attractive, to our primary segment of business, which is emerging fintech partners. And so CPX really has been, it's sort of coincidental that it came out at the same time at Falls Fintech. We'd been working on both projects, and we realized that, hey, these are going to come to life at about the same time. And they are very complementary to one another, because we want cohort participants, when we bring their product to life, we want them to use CPX. And so it's really worked out really well to be able to announce these two really exciting projects together.
Yeah, you
One,
guys have a lot of balls in
one
the
thing
air.
I'll
It's
add.
I
Yeah,
don't know.
no, it is. It is a lot of balls in there. One thing I will add, also around CPX, we thought it was really important, is not to confine the user of CPX to one provider of that particular service. And so
Interesting.
you'll see multiple processing options. You'll see multiple card fulfillment options. You'll see multiple ID verification services. So oftentimes, I think in open API structures, it's very open and it works great and it's easy to connect into, but you don't have a lot of choice in those back end services. And so we think by allowing the issuing bank and the bank partner to be the provider of the open API platform, then we can bring in some elements of choice on the behind the scenes providers that are really, really crucial, and where the fintech may have a particular affinity over another.
Trent, thank you for joining us on the Tearsheet podcast. It was great learning about sort of the ecosystem that you guys are building, and we look forward to hearing some of those announcements that you have around Money 2020 as well.
Thank you, Zach. A big fan of Tearsheet.